Welcome to Access Spotlight. I'm Travis Youssef. I have the pleasure of sitting down with Mike Sapraicone. Mike is a Republican resident who is running to be the next U.S. representative of New York's 3rd Congressional District. Welcome, Mike. So happy to have you here today.
Thanks for having me, Travis. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. So yeah, let's just get started. According to your website, you're a retired New York Police Department detective, community volunteer, small business founder, and nationally recognized security expert. Talk to us a little bit about that.
It all
Mike.
sounds correct, Travis.
Yeah.
So thank you. But so I'm a retired NYPD detective. I served for 20 years.
Awesome.
I started with the transit police and worked my way up to retired as a first grade detective. When I retired in 2000, there was only about 144 first grade detectives out of 7,000 detectives at the time. So it was a pretty important thing. Very proud of that and very proud of working and serving the city for so many years. I started as a transit cop working the subways in the early 80s, and I was very much part of the Giuliani and Braden administration when crime was at a tremendous high back in the 90s. I worked in that unit to reduce crime and talk about broken windows and talk about quality of life and how we did things like that back in the 90s to change and turn the city around. So that was all good stuff and proud of that. And then as I was on the police department, I was working 3 jobs. You know, I had 5 children, and I worked my police job. I worked at Nobody Beats the Whiz, if anybody remembers that, and I would deliver Chinese food at night. Very difficult to raise children back then and try to work, and my wife worked part-time or full-time or not at all, staying home as a mom. So I did that for a long time, and I opened up a security company when I was still on the job, and that was permissible. And I started with a couple of cops working for me, and I looked for a little niche. My niche was to have all my employees be active or retired law enforcement. So over the course of the 32 years I owned that company, we grew that to somewhere between 600 and 800 retired and active cops.
Awesome.
I had a company in Chicago, in LA, in New York, in Dallas, and also in Toronto and in Vancouver. Last September, I was able to sell that company.
Okay.
I also have a company in the UK where I do all law enforcement people and military people.
Oh, great.
And I've actually kept that company, and we're in the process of selling that. So I was very lucky over my 30-something years to be able to be a strong New York City detective and a business owner. And I think, you know, I'm looking at now running for Congress, as you mentioned, in New York's Congressional District 3. And I think it's important that I'm not a politician. I'm just this cop and detective guy and this business owner. And I've learned so much over the years to be able to work with people. And I learned in the police department how to have a communication switch with people. And that's so important. And I think sometimes we see some of our politicians lack that. You know, they talk about their agendas and what they need to do and what's best for you. And we kind of seem to forget about the guys like us who vote for those politicians, right? And we don't really have a good understanding of what the people need until we think we need to ask, instead of listening all the time and maybe making that what we need to do. So in business, I learned to do that. It was very important to listen to my employees and listen to my clients. And, you know, you have a lot of employees who would come and say, well, this is a problem, this is a problem. And I'd say, okay, we're kind of aware of that problem, but how do we fix that problem? Can you come to me with a solution? And nowadays, I find a lot of people don't come with solutions. They want to complain about problems. You know, it's important to know what the problem is, but just as important to figure out a solution. And not necessarily only have one plan, because sometimes plan A or plan number 1 fails. So what's plan B? So that's an important situation, to have a plan ready and know how to work off of it. So I think I bring that to the table. I think it's important with some of my clients, and I've had some major clients over the years. We're able to sit down with one client and say, hey, you do this really, really well, but you're kind of not really good at that. And hey, this client is really good at that, but he doesn't do this well, he or she, and you do that better. So why don't we look at best practices? Why don't we put together what we have and make a better relationship for your business and for my business? And over my 30 years in business, that's very much part of my success. And so I'm proud of that, and I think that's what politics is, or governing is about. Well, you know, we talk about crossing the aisle, and what does that mean? Well, I actually had the experience of going to the State of the Union in February this year and sitting there in the upstairs in the gallery and watching that happen. And I saw people not crossing the aisle, how people sat on, the Republicans sat on one side, Democrats sat on the other side, and I didn't see a lot of conversation back and forth. And it's all part of my concern about people on the far left and people on the far right, and what happens to the rest of the world who needs to be center and in the middle.
Yeah.
And we don't see that anymore. We see, when I was growing up, I don't remember ever anybody saying, are you a Democrat or a Republican? Really, in a conversation, in a normal conversation.
Yep.
Nowadays, you can't have a conversation without, are you a Democrat? Are you a Republican? What's the difference? You know, well, I only vote down the line. I only vote this. Okay, how about educating yourself about the candidate, finding out a little bit about the candidate, and voting for the best person? Oh, I don't vote. Well, then you can't complain.
Yeah.
If you don't vote and you want to have a voice at the table, like we all do, then you need to educate yourself, listen to the candidates, and make an educated decision on who the best candidate is.
Absolutely.
And I think that's important. I think we lack that.
For sure.
I also find in business a lot of times, I always thought it was important to take ownership. Even not as the owner, even as a detective. Take ownership of your case, take ownership of your job.
Take pride.
Take pride in what you do, and I find that we lack that now. As a society, we lack. You know, oh, I work 9 to 5. Or I try to hire somebody, and they say, oh, well, how many days a week do I have to work? 5 days. Oh, but I only work 2 days. You know, I'd rather do the rest from home. Well, sometimes that will work in different industry, but not always. And you need to understand that you go to work and it's important to be there and to care about your company, right?
Yep, absolutely.
To make it. I think people take too many things as a job nowadays and not a career.
Yeah.
Right? And if you switch that around, some of the politicians have become a career where maybe it should only be a job, right?
Yep.
You know, we talked a little bit earlier about term limits, and I think it's hard to say what a term limit should be, but I think that at some point we should look at something, and I just signed the resolution saying that if I was elected to Congress, I would look to do 3 2-year terms,
Great.
and I think the Senate should do 2 6-year terms. Part of the things that concern me about that is when you do a 2-year term, though, as soon as you get elected, you're out there begging somebody to reelect you and asking somebody for money. When do you govern?
Yeah.
When do you govern?
Why do you feel that it's important to have term limits?
Well, because I think you need fresh blood, you need fresh minds, fresh thoughts, fresh ideas.
Sure.
I think when our forefathers started this Constitution back 200 and something years ago, they weren't planning that you should be there forever.
Yep.
You shouldn't be a professional politician. You should be a person, a citizen who wants to give back a little bit and help the country to become better.
Absolutely.
And so I've been so lucky in my career. I've been able to, you know, I'm on many boards. I sit on the executive board of Tomorrow's Hope, which is an organization in Nassau County. We give scholarships to grammar schools throughout the Diocese of Rockville Center. I co-chair the Columbus Day Parade. I'm a member of the Board of Governors of the Columbus Citizens Foundation. Our main goal is scholarships from grammar school to high school to college.
Great.
I sit on the board of Mount Sinai South Nassau, a great hospital down on the South Shore, and it's about caring for people and understanding what people's needs and their rights are. And I've learned so much to give back, and giving back is an important thing. You know, I was lucky enough to serve as the school board president in Seaford over 10 or 12 years ago. I sat on that board for 5 years as a trustee and then as the president of the Seaford School Board. And I learned about, now you can say I like to talk, Travis, so you've seen that going on right now, but I've also learned to listen a little bit more, right? And to listen about parents' agendas and parents' needs. And so I was considered the jock parent when I was on that board because I wanted to build a new football field. And I learned, as I listened to other parents who weren't on the board but were members of the school district, you know, if you had a better science lab, my son or daughter could be a chemist. Okay. And if you had a better music department, they could be in the Philharmonic. And I said, well, I don't know if that's true, but you know what? It's important, and it's a valid point.
Yeah.
And why aren't we listening enough?
Sure. And how do you feel that, you know, your time, like being on those boards has, you know, will help you with the election?
Oh, easily. I mean, it's a part about learning how to talk to people.
Yeah.
You know, and looking at people and having a discussion with them. I find so many of the people who have run for elected office over my years watching have, you know, they're looking at me for a couple of dollars and then looking past me for the next contribution or donation, however you want to call it.
Rather than focusing just on you.
Rather than focusing on me and my story and what I need.
Yeah, and who you are.
And what's important. That's right. And why am I going to vote for you?
Yeah.
why should I vote for you? And what I need and what I feel I need, right?
Yeah.
Which are important things.
Absolutely.
So I think that's important.
Yeah. Why do you feel that now's the right time for you to get into this? Because, you know, I didn't ask you before. Has anyone in your family been in politics? Are you kind of a first time looking to get into?
So nobody in my family was ever in politics until my wife decided to run for judge.
Oh, great.
About 6 or 7 or maybe even 8 years ago. She ran for family court judge and lost. And that's the first time I ever saw anything about politics. I mean, I'm certainly involved with both parties. I'm a business person on Long Island.
Yeah.
So I've donated to both sides of the aisle because I think that's important. I learned that many years ago. I had a client who told me, you always donate to both sides. And I'm going to change his words a little bit. He didn't use these words. He said, because you never know who's going to win. He threw some other things into that, right?
Sure.
And he said, you need to be, if you're in a business person, you need to be aware of that.
Yep.
But I've never taken any local contracts. I've never taken any state contracts. I've never taken any federal contracts in my business. I never do business with government. I just always thought it was bad practice. Plus, they don't pay well, okay? And I didn't want to do that, right?
Sure.
So I never did that. But my wife was then elected to Nassau County Family Court.
Great.
And then she was later elected to Nassau County Supreme Court. So she's a sitting Supreme Court justice.
Wonderful. So you know a little bit.
A little bit. I know about standing at train stations and handing out palm cards and listening to her talk to people. Judges are a little different. They can't really have a lot of opinions.
Okay.
So they're just running and they're basically quiet. I have a whole bunch of opinions.
Yeah.
And I'm allowed to bring them up and talk about them, which I think is really interesting and fun.
Yes.
Someone said to me the other day, "You having fun doing this?" And I said, "I enjoy talking. I enjoy listening, and I'm having a ball." What I don't enjoy doing is asking for money, because I've always been asked for money and never really had to give any. It never had to ask for money.
Sure.
So that's difficult, but we're doing okay there too.
Yeah, I mean, talking a little bit about that, you know, I don't think it will ever really happen, but I've always felt that there should be a cap on the monies allowed to be invested into a campaign so that there's an equal playing field. How do you feel about that?
Well, you know, when I think about and when I hear about that they're going to spend in this congressional district alone, the numbers are amazing. What both parties are talking about throwing into this. You know, we have people who don't have food. We have people sleeping on the ground. You know, isn't that important? Well, it's certainly important to make sure the government is correct, right? And it's very important that we maintain the House coming up in 2024, the Republicans. So that's important. But is there a way to work it out where we're not spending millions and millions and millions of dollars to do that?
Focus some of that somewhere else, like you're saying.
Right. And there's so many other things that we need to focus on that we kind of like, I guess our priorities sometimes aren't always where they should be. That's part of life, I guess, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you know, talking about the community, it's definitely gone through some changes over the last years, as we know. There seems to be a lot of tensions between, you know, groups within the community, empty stores. It's expensive to live in Nassau County. You're a Nassau County resident. I know you originally grew up in Richmond Hill, Queens.
I did, which was a great place to grow up. Queens was such a great place.
Yeah.
I really miss those days. You know, just riding my bike all over the place and hanging out on the stoop at night and sitting around. And, you know, I don't know if it's as easy to do that nowadays in the city as it was then.
Yeah, a little
different.
different.
When you live in the boroughs, when you say the city, that means you're going to Manhattan. That's like a big deal. You get on the train, you get on a bus, you go to Manhattan. That's a big deal. A great place to grow up. You know, I grew up in Richmond Hill. I got my first job in a little Italian restaurant, Solano's, and I used to deliver the newspaper, the Long Island Press, and the tablet on my bike. Those were things you had like a 20-block thing. And I grew up and I went to Holy Cross High School in Flushing, which is part of my district now, part of the Whitestone, Bayside, Malba, Flushing area. That's part of the district, District 3. Great area to grow up and live. So I went to Holy Cross High School, and that was terrific. And then I became a cop. When I became a cop, I stayed there until about 1991. I lived in the city. And then I moved my family out to Suffolk County, out to Nassau County, out to Seaford. And part of the reasoning was the school districts were changing where I was living. And in order to have the right school, it was very difficult. You had to go to the school you lived in. We lived in an area that had a decent school, But as the kids got older and as the neighborhoods changed and education started to falter off in the city school system, I would have to pay to send my children to parochial school. I'm Catholic, and that's where I would want to send them. So I decided to move to Seaford, where I paid higher taxes, but schools were free. Where in the city I paid lower taxes, but I'd have to pay for private education.
Okay.
So I made a good choice, I think, back in 1991, and I moved to Seaford, Long Island, and I was able to put my 3 children through the Seaford school. At that time, I had 3 children. Put the 3 children through the Seaford School District.
Awesome.
Later on, I had 2 other children. My babies are 26; they're twins.
Oh, great.
Okay, and Seaford was starting to change, even as I was part of the board. Changing in education, where we were cutting things from the budget, and the budget was hard. You know, you lived in a place like Massapequa, where Massapequa had a mall, and the malls and the businesses are able to subsidize some of those tax things, right? Which is changing also. The mall in Massapequa is closing.
I know.
Massapequa, a big part of my district and very important part of my district. But Seaford didn't have any stores. So we were having a problem passing a budget at points, and we'd have to cut things. So we cut some sports. We cut some AP classes, some extracurricular things other than just sports. So at that point, my business was doing well, and I had an opportunity to move, and I moved up to Upper Brookville, where I've been for the last 10 years.
Awesome.
And I decided to send my children to Kellenberg. And my 2 youngest daughters went to Kellenberg. One of my daughters fought me tremendously. She didn't want to leave her friends in Seaford.
Sure.
So, but it all worked out. They both went to Kellenberg, graduated from Kellenberg, got a great education. And you know, the education system in Nassau County is a fantastic education system.
Absolutely.
There's no question about it. You can't beat the bang for your buck. And what we do, and you know, college isn't for everybody. I went to college for about 10 years and never graduated, okay? I went to John Jay. Because I was working and going, I was in the Navy for a little while, and I was working as a cop and going to school at night. Yeah. So I never finished. And a big part of it, my kids would say, well, why should we go to college, Dad? You seem to do okay without college. And I always learned, growing up as an Italian-American in the family, how important education was.
Yes.
So I stressed to them, you need to go to college. College is, you know, 10 years ago, college was like getting a high school diploma. Now you probably need a doctorate to get along in most things, right? But Seaford was a great place to raise my kids. Nassau County does a great job with education. They still do. And the point I was going to bring up is BOCES, for instance, has great education, vocational educations, right? Not everybody's going to be a doctor or lawyer, but we need plumbers. We need, you know, we need carpenters. Right. We need skilled labor. And Nassau does a great job and has great programs in doing that. And that's important. That's very important because those trades die. We die with it.
Yeah. So what keeps you in Nassau County?
Oh, I don't know where else to go. Where else would I go? I mean, I'm, you know, like I said, I sold my company and I'm still working as the CEO of my company for a few more months until I decide to
And that's
leave.
Squad Security.
Squad Security, that's right.
Awesome.
I founded that in 1992, either 91 or 92. As I get older, I forget little things.
It's all right.
But I won't forget when we're passing a bill and signing something into Congress. I'll make sure I won't do that. But I know I was a Queens guy.
Yep.
And I love Queens, but I love Nassau. It's given me so much opportunity. It's given my children opportunity. It's a great place to grow up. So many parks and beautiful things. It's important to have community, feeling of community.
And talking a little bit about community, you know, what are some of your accomplishments that you're really proud of that you've achieved when it comes specifically to the community?
Well, I think it comes to giving back. I mean, I think that's the most important thing that you can accomplish. I've met many people who have been successful who just refuse to give back. And it's sad. And I think that it's so important. That's why I belong to these boards that I'm on, and they're all non-for-profit boards. And I think it's so important. You work hard for your treasure, and I think when you give away part of your treasure, that's a big deal. And it makes people think and understand a little bit about how you are. Right?
And the impact that then you have on those people in the community.
Well, you look at the children we're able to put through school that might not be able to go there. You know, so a quick story. So I was on the review board for scholarships at Tomorrow's Hope. That only lasted 1 year because, you know, everybody will appeal their, you know, would appeal what the decision might be. And there's only so much money we have to give away to each student.
Yeah.
So I was terrible at reading a story and saying that they're appealing because of this and that. And I would say, well, let's just give them more money. And the rest of the board would say, well, we only have this as our budget. And I would say, well, what if I donated a little bit more? And they'd say, like, well, there's 30 people. Do you want to donate a little more to 30 people? And I'd say, I do, but it's not realistic.
Sure.
But I didn't last too long on the appeals committee, okay? So I wasn't good at that. It's
All
something
good.
I'm not good at.
Yeah. But you know what, though? You figure out your strengths, your weaknesses, like you said before. And it's really about finding that path.
Right.
You know?
And things are about, actions speak louder than words, right? So I think that's so important, to be honest about what you feel.
Yep.
You have to, people just say things sometimes without thinking, and you hurt people's feelings.
Yeah.
You need to take a step back and think about the conversation. I'm not big on burning bridges. Sometimes you want to because you're so angry or frustrated, but you need to listen to people, appreciate people. Not everybody's going to think the same way you are.
Yeah.
But part of the sad part about when we talk about, are you a Democrat or Republican? Nowadays, people don't even want to have a decent conversation because they have different ideas and different things. We're okay to have different ideas.
Absolutely.
Nothing wrong with that. That's what makes us a great country.
As long as there's a common vision and mission.
Yeah, but
right?
there's no mission sometimes. People just have their ideas, and that's all they want you to hear, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's important.
No, for sure, Mike. And talk to me a little bit about, I was looking on your website, it mentions a few different issues that you're campaigning for: public safety, border security, affordability, quality of life, and integrity in government. Which do you feel are most important?
Well, they're all important. I mean,
Absolutely.
they're all kind of wound into one thing, but we could go, safety is so important.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, being a cop in the transit system for years.
And like you said, you saw kind of, things back then, things now, so the 30-year difference.
It's a difference.
Yeah.
But I don't want us to get to the place we were back in the 90s, and that's important. But we need to take action about things, stop talking about things. Broken windows was that thing where you locked up and you stopped and frisked everybody. Well, the concept was correct back in the 90s. Sometimes it got taken away and looked at the wrong way, and it became a catch-all for everything. And that's what probably made it ineffective in a sense. But I think it's important that you look at quality of life.
Yep.
Many criminals jumping over a turnstile or drinking or smoking a joint, but I don't know if that's legal or not legal. You go outside your office and it smells of pot, and you go, what are we coming to? I mean, you should have your rights, but what about taking away other people's rights? So if you don't like that and you want to smoke in front of them, that's okay. And again, I'm not really sure where the law goes about what, I don't think some of the cops are really sure exactly what the law is. And you don't want to break the law because then you're criticized that you did something wrong, right? Yep. But I think that's quality of life is very important, quality of life crimes. And I think we stop the bigger crimes because you'll notice the recidivist people are people who have committed smaller crimes and have built up to things. Bail reform, just absurd to what we're looking at. I mean, closing Rikers Island and putting correctional facilities back into the boroughs. What are we doing? What are we thinking about? Who do we care about? What do we do with Rikers Island? Maybe build a big multi-complex building there for somebody to make more money off of? Yep. So, we have to think about what our actions are and how that works, right? So I think crime is an utmost importance. And, we're all immigrants from somewhere or another, right? But it's not about immigration. It's about migration. It's about coming into the border illegally. And what do we do to change that?
Yep.
Do we just let anybody walk in the door? And no, we can't. You can't do that. It's important that we structure a plan and we don't just say, come on in, come on in, come on in, and what are we going to do with you? It's not fair to them. No. It's not fair to the people we bring in. Yeah. It's this humanitarianism. No, that's not humanitarianism. This is just ridiculousness. We can't allow people to come across our borders and have no way to take care of them.
Sure.
And put them on a bus and send them to Chicago, put them on a bus and send them to New York. And, County Executive Blakeman took a strong stance on we're not going to put them in the Coliseum. We're not going to do this. We're not going to allow that. Yeah. And when does the governor start understanding, when does the president, the governor, and the mayor They're all from the same party. How do we unify things if you can't even? And I can't say that because the Republicans are doing the same thing in the House right now, and that has to change. But it's important that people start working together, make a plan, and do things. You know, you go and you talk about economy, though. You go into the local Stop and Shop in my neighborhood, and you listen to people say eggs are so expensive, and milk is so expensive. I'm only can I get 6 eggs? Can I do this? And you kind of feel bad.
Yeah.
And it's not only the elderly people or the senior citizens saying this, young people are saying this. And I think, you know, the Democrats in AOC came out with something where she wants to increase tax by 5% on any couple, any family making over $250,000. $250,000 isn't all that much money when you look at it.
Not today.
A fireman, a cop, a nurse, a school teacher, if you combine them, they're probably making over $250,000. And they're working so hard for that money. So you're going to take another 5% tax on them.
Yeah.
You know, it's sad. It's sad. You know, and you look at unemployment. People are saying unemployment is in a great place. It's not in a great place. There's so many people out there who have no jobs. Part of it is because we gave so much during COVID, I think. We gave so much during COVID that people said, well, why should I ever go back to work? Why should I work? Let me just have the government take care of me.
Sure.
And in order to have the government take care of the people who need it, we all need to work hard to do that. And I don't see that anymore.
Yeah. And that's such a shame. You know, and talking a little bit about the job itself can sometimes be thankless. So, you know, what made you want to run for Congress?
I think everything could be thankless. It's what you make of it, right? When I was a young detective, I came on in 1980, and there had been layoffs from 73 to 80. So when I came on, there was a lot of disgruntled cops who were rookies with 7 years on the job. So they were mad at the city. They were mad at the police department. There were no meritorious promotions. There were no civil service promotions. So they didn't care. So that opened up this great opportunity for me. I was able to go into a specialized unit within 2 years on the job. I was working in a plainclothes anti-crime unit in my second year on the job, which is unheard of most times. But because there were so many people who didn't want to take these opportunities, it gave me the opportunity.
Great.
And that helped me advance. But I find that many people in this country, and it's sad, they think that mediocrity is what is fine. That's what we survive on.
Yeah.
And the people who step above mediocre, those are the people that succeed. And they work hard, and they're able to help other people to succeed and work hard. And that's what I kind of base my life on. I think working hard is fine. Somebody will say, oh, it's Saturday. This could be a great weekend. And as a business owner, Saturday's Tuesday to me. It doesn't matter. If something happens on Saturday, which is, again, a bad thing in a way, because when I was growing up, if your father or mother were civil servants, they were off on the weekends, right? And the malls weren't open on Saturday. They closed at 6 o'clock. This is way before your time, too, probably. But the malls would close on Sunday. That was a definite. Most stores closed at 6 o'clock on Saturday night. And you had to go to a deli or something to get anything you needed because the supermarkets were even closed. They weren't open on Sunday. Okay, Sunday was the day you went to grandma's house, and your cousins and your relatives all came, and you sat and you enjoyed yourself and you had fun. You argued about politics. You argued about religion. You argued about your what kind of ethics. I can't say it. Ethics you were, right? You argued about that, or you argued about everything. That your aunt did this, your uncle did this, your cousin stole your basketball.
Still love each other.
You loved each other. And at the end of the day, you sat there and you ate, and your grandmother cooked, and you laughed, and you went home, and you couldn't wait for next Sunday.
Totally.
You know, you went to church, you went to relatives, and that was your Sunday. You got dressed up. And I do this also, so I can't say, but when I went to church as a child, you always got dressed. That was like the big deal. Now I go to church in jeans and a sport jacket or shorts if it's the summer. Not good, but I guess part of the ways of life, right? But and I'm not looking to bring us back to everything we had. But I do think it's important that we bring our values back.
Definitely.
Integrity is important. Honesty is important. The way you treat people is important. I always learn to treat people the way you want to be treated.
Absolutely.
And
the golden rule, right?
It is the golden rule. And sometimes we fail. And we do fail at things.
We're human.
But what I also learned in business is it's not about you making mistakes. You can make mistakes. It's about the action you take to correct the mistakes.
Absolutely.
And that's what we need to do. And we don't do this well
Yeah.
anymore.
Own it.
That's right.
Face it.
That's
move
right.
forward kind of thing.
If this is what you said, then stand behind what you said and have no problem with saying, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
This isn't the best thing we can do. We need to move forward with
Yeah.
this.
And I'll fix it.
Right.
Try to fix it at least.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're going to hear from politicians as this race goes on about all the wonderful things they've done in politics and how they tried to do this and how they stood behind that.
Yep.
But have they succeeded?
Yeah.
At some point, people have to learn to succeed.
Yep.
It's doable. I've
Yeah.
succeeded in 2 careers. I
Yeah.
will succeed in a 3rd career.
Absolutely.
Because it's doable. And if you put your mind to it and you stick to your word and you're an honest person, you will succeed.
I agree.
You know, you'll have obstacles. There's always hiccups and bumps. But if you stay to your goals and stay to your vision and stay to yourself,
Yeah.
you'll be a successful
Yeah.
person.
No, that's great, Mike. So one last question then before we go. Why is it important to go out and vote?
Oh, well, you shouldn't complain if you don't vote. Come on. You listen to kids, I don't vote. You listen to older people, I don't vote. We need to help our elderly in our nursing homes get out and vote. It's important. They want to vote.
Absolutely.
We need to teach our children. That's a big deal. You're 18 years old. You have an opportunity to make a difference. If you don't say anything or vote, then you just shut your mouth and go in a corner and forget about it. You can't complain if you don't vote, but educate yourself.
Yep.
Don't just go into that, and it's not even a box. That annoys me, too. I'll bring this up real quick to you.
That's good. Yeah,
it's
no.
election day. Isn't it election day?
Yeah.
Right. It's not election week, election month.
Yes.
Okay. So, yes, maybe that's good in some cases because people aren't home or they can't get out.
Sure.
Blah, blah, blah. It's election day.
Yeah.
It's election day. That's the way I was growing. Go and vote that day. Get out and vote. Make it a big deal.
Yeah.
Talk about it. Don't talk about who you're voting for. Well, you can talk about who you're voting for if you want.
Yeah.
But go and vote. Discuss it with your family. Educate yourself. Get out there and vote. That's important.
Yeah.
Then if you vote, then you can complain.
Yep.
But you know who can change it next time? Only you if you vote. So that's important.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome, Mike. Well, thank you for being here.
Oh,
Really
thanks for having me.
appreciate it.
This was great.
And thank you for watching Access Spotlight.